Hi, this is Tim Donner, joined by Andrew Moran, the economics writer for LibertyNation.com, for what promises to be a lively discussion about trade. And Andrew, you and I disagree on the tariffs that were imposed by President Trump, 25% on steel, 10% on aluminum. However, as we go forward here, we see that Trump is using these tariffs as something of a negotiating point, some leverage, some bargaining chips, because we see what he's done with Canada, your own Canada, and Mexico. So, wouldn't you say, as much as you're opposed to tariffs, that they do provide the president something of a matter of extra leverage in trade negotiations?
Well, I have heard the argument that Trump is playing a game of 4D chess, underwater, hungry hippos, blindfolded, handcuffed, playing all these other games. I can't go into his head. I hear that argument a lot. I hear it when historians talk about what other presidents did, what they were thinking at times. All I know is that he's presented these tariffs, he signed them, and he's exempted Canada and Mexico so far, and he's considering other countries. But for the most part, I just disapprove of the tariffs.
Okay, so we'll agree to disagree on tariffs as we do on baseball. That's an inside joke. But let's talk about the World Trade Organization, because there's word now that what Trump is doing with the WTO is deliberately blocking the appointment of judges to their very powerful appellate court, which settles trade disputes. And the WTO, the leaders of them, are getting very nervous. What do you make of Trump's strategy regarding the World Trade Organization, which includes 159 members?
Well, you and I will definitely agree on this one. You wrote a great piece this morning, is Trump out to decimate world trade? And in it, you mentioned how the WTO is concerned that he may dismantle the organization. I can only hope that he does. When he said during the campaign trail that he wanted to abolish NATO, or at least leave NATO, that was a step in the right direction. The WTO is another bureaucratic monstrosity that should be left entirely. There's a long, detailed history of international groups like the WTO. If you remember, during the Woodrow Wilson era, he wanted to adopt the World Trade Council. Thankfully, the free trade advocates at the time disapproved of it. And then it was during the Truman administration, he wanted to establish the International Trade Organization. Unfortunately, they got gaxed, and then about 40 years later, they adopted the WTO. The WTO its only goal is to expand its power, expand over jurisdictions, erode national sovereignty. It only benefits the well-connected. It benefits crony capitalist corporations. It doesn't benefit real free traders, and it doesn't help small businesses. The World Trade Organization councils really overstep their boundaries. There was a great example during the Obama administration in India. India had developed its own solar power manufacturing program. But the green energy businesses that were subsidized by the Obama administration, they complained to the U.S. government, and then the U.S. government were forced to defend their own private firms. And then they had to take this this developing country that's trying to become prosperous, and they took them to the WTO court, and then the WTO court ruled in favor of the U.S. subsidized energy firms. These governments that get billions of dollars, these corporations that get billions of dollars every year, and then they slammed the small private Indian companies. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think you and I agree, as do most conservatives and libertarians, that free trade is a good idea. The problem is that so many conservatives term agreements like NAFTA as free trade when they really aren't. Free trade's a much more simple proposition than multilateral deals. And it seems that the direction the Trump administration is using is getting away from these multilateral deals and towards bilateral deals. The difference being, in one case with multilaterals, you've got to compromise for the sake of several other countries. With bilateral deals, you're negotiating one-on-one with individual countries. Does that not seem like the most sensible way to advance the ball when it comes to trade?
In your first point, when you say that the free trade advocates, when they say that NAFTA or the WTO or GATT are free trade deals, they're really not. It's just euphemisms. Because if you look at when politicians talking about taxes, they always talk about how it's investments. So when they talk about government spending, it's always an investment in the future, and we have to contribute to these investments to make everyone prosperous. But NAFTA, WTO only benefit a few people. It benefits the crony capitalist businesses, the well-connected, the elite, the globalists, governments, bureaucrats. The bilateral trade deals that President Trump is trying to impose, it's a much smarter approach, because a one-size-fits-all trade pact will only benefit, again, those very selected few. Small businesses, people who own only a few companies will not benefit, because they won't get the perks that are usually found in trade deals. So one example I like to use is when President Obama, when he removed the trade embargo on Cuba. When he did that, it only benefited banks, it only benefited his friends, it only benefited celebrities. If I wanted to go down there and buy Cuban cigars, or if you wanted to go down and buy Cuban cigars, you couldn't do that, because you weren't exempted from the trade embargo. So it's just government at its best, only helping its campaign contributors and helping the globalists. So it's about time that President Trump or the U.S. government in general use bilateral trade deals, or better yet, get rid of trade deals entirely. Just have simple free trade, no government managed, no central planning. I can go down to Mexico, I can buy shirts, and then I can go back to the United States, mark up the prices, and that is free trade.
Well, I would love to see that too, Andrew, but I think we'll grow a lot of gray hairs waiting for that to happen. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, sir.
And that is Andrew Moran, and we hope you'll read more of his excellent writing on economics on libertynation.com. I'm Tim Donner, and this is LNTV.